Hi, my name's Dan Keane from Spitfire Audio. Today I'm going to be showing you a piece I've written to accompany a docu-series style film that we've made, and we're actually going to give this video away, so check out the links down below to see how you can download it and take part in this new scoring challenge. I've used every library from the Hans Zimmer range, so that's Hans Zimmer Piano, Hans Zimmer Percussion, HZ02, which is an LA-based drum library, and of course our Hans Zimmer Strings library. So I'm just going to start by kind of playing the film, showing how I've done it, and then we'll go into the hidden gems within these libraries and also talk about how to pace, how to write against picture, etc. So I hope you'll stick around for that. So it's a fairly simple piece, but I really look forward to hearing what you do with this video, and you can download it down below for free and then share it with us with the hashtag HansZimmerMonth. So I'm going to break this down into library by library, and I started by just trying to set a pace for the film, and I've got these Hans Zimmer Synth Performance Kit here from the HZ02 library. Now, I've filtered this quite a bit. As you can see, I've EQ'd out just that resonant tone, and then I've used a noise gate here to come away quite quickly because I wanted to add some distortion as well. So by pairing these all together, we get something that's quite punchy, but also has quite an upfront, slightly distorted sound. Now, this is really kind of the kind of heartbeat-like thump that you hear the whole way through the piece. The tempo doesn't change, so it's quite driving, and this helps to deliver on the brief of the film, which I had, which was just to kind of basically make it bigger and bigger until the very end to match the images that we see on screen. So then paired with that, I've also added some other elements as well, some little bits of ear candy. And you can see a little bit later on, I've also added some hi-hats from the Sony stage as well. Now you can see for the most part, I'm not actually trying to hit particular hit points. The main ones that I was trying to go for was this establishing shot that we see here. And I think the movement of the camera helps there to know that we're in motion at that point. And of course, the whole way through the film, there's more and more water building up. Next, just to help with the kind of structure of the piece, I created these little beat markers. And this is actually from Hans Zimmer Percussion. And I just thought, I'm just going to take a taiko and just put it in there and see how it sounds. So when we listen to them paired side by side, now you can see that I'm not actually hitting directly on the cuts, and I would always say that if you're trying to write for picture, it doesn't always work really well to have things going straight on every cut. That can sometimes look a little bit amateurish, but also if you're doing this, you're working on a film with somebody, the editor could always move a couple of frames either side if they needed to. So I think always try and prioritize it sounding lovely and sounding musical. Now you might have noticed that this has a slightly tonal sound to it, these beat markers. And if I just add this EQ just to accentuate that. It's a low C sharp. So with that in mind, I decided that I'd actually start with a bit of timpani just to help bring that out. So when we hear them combined, and this EQ is now kind of disengaged, just helps to bring that out a little bit. So that actually informed the harmony quite well. Now, if I move on to the Hans Zimmer percussion, you can see I'll actually pair these together. I should have moved these further down really, but let's just have a listen to these all together. These really help to kind of anticipate what the next beat is going to do. And if we move a little bit further along here, when it really starts, when the water starts to kind of flow much more quickly, you can see that we've got a lot more hits going on. So if I just combine that now with the synth performance kit, you can see how the two complement each other really well. Particularly this hit here, which again is from HZ02. So generally, we're not looking to kind of fill the space too much. I wanted those big hits to come out louder than everything else. So sometimes it's about adding lots of small layers to add little kind of rhythmic features. For me, that sounds a lot more interesting than just 1 or 2 layers that are really, really loud in the mix. Now, one benefit we have with Hans Zimmer percussion is that because it was recorded in the hall at Air Studios, we get a great variance between the close, the room, and then the surround microphones, the ambient microphones. So if we just listen to this, this is just the close mic. Sounds really up close and personal. If I now take this third microphone, we get a much kind of wider aspect. So we can use the mix between these really to our advantage. And sometimes I'll use the close microphones on something that's more metallic, something that's a more kind of transient bass sound, and then I'll use the room microphones for those larger taiko hits. Now, to accompany these percussive layers, I then added Hans Zimmer piano, which if you haven't seen already, has an enormous array of extra scrapes and side hits, and I use those to my advantage here. If I just play these on their own, they're going through their own bus. Now, so as not to kind of make it too busy, you can see that I've created a couple of duplicates where I've just flipped the stereo image the other way. And you can do this by, normally your mixer would look like this, and you can right click, click stereo pan, and then you can click command and hit it, and it basically just turns left to right. So that's quite a useful feature to have. Now, by doing this, I've basically kind of duplicated parts, moved them down, and so we hear similar sounds, but they're moving from one side to the other, and this just helps to make it sound a little bit more interesting without adding too many new features each time. So if I now combine that with the Hans Zimmer percussion and the other Hans Zimmer synth kit as well, now, I have used the main tonal aspects to the library as well, and I should say at this point that we have a huge update for Hans Zimmer piano with loads of tickets resolved from your feedback from over the last year, so do update if you haven't done already. So I started just by kind of complementing the timpani hits and of course that low boom which we heard earlier. You can see I've also used the mallet harmonics here, and these are great because there's a really kind of sharp transient and then it dies away fairly quickly. I wanted to make this a little bit more interesting, so I decided to add a tremolo plugin, and I'm quite harsh here with this, but I just wanted to keep it out of the center so it oscillates between the two sides quite heavily. You can see I'm also doing lots of mid-side processing separately so that we don't get too much of the transient of the notes being hit, we just get those higher upper frequencies. So if we combine this now with the Hans Zimmer piano percussion, I decided at this point that we do need a proper tune, so I decided to go into the super soft layers and add this little melody on the top. And again, you can see I've filtered off the low range here. This is just to keep it a little bit cleaner in the mix. Again, because we've got access to so many microphone positions here, I've actually turned them all on so you hear that resonance within the hall. And if I combine that now with the other piano parts, this is how that sounds. Finally, we've got some strings, and of course, the great thing about Hans Zimmer strings is that you can get scale unlike anything else. To be able to use just 20 celli or all the way up to 60 celli, that scale is what makes this really exciting. So for me, the way I tend to use this library is I will start, if I've got something like this which builds from a quieter register up to really big by the end, I'll actually start with fewer players and then open it out to more players. And this is something that Christian refers to as almost like a kind of aperture effect, slowly opening up. So if I just play these layers that we've got at the beginning here, I'm using the celli, trems, harms, and the legatos as well. So if I just start at the beginning, I've got these effects here, and if I just open up the harmonics, you'll see how this works. So you can see it grows very, very slowly. So I'm using the harmonics on the left-hand side and then the tremolo, consordino, pont waves on the right-hand side. So you get that lovely stereo spread. If I now combine that with these long legatos, and again, this is with 60 celli now, so you get the weight of that in the hall. And then as it gets bigger, we get the basses coming in as well. And then I wanted to add a little bit of rhythmic interest. So I've got these strum pits. So I've got the center 20 violins, the left 20 violins, and then the right 20 violins, and they're each playing slightly different notes. And so as the piece gets bigger, I then decided to add some celli at the bottom here. So we've got 20 on the left and 20 on the right. And because these are different performances of the same notes, we can do this kind of tracking technique where we're basically double tracking. And the great thing about having them on the left and the right like this is that, again, we're staying kind of out of the way of the middle of the stereo image. It didn't sound kind of grungy enough, so I decided to add some distorted short basses as well. And this is just a distortion plugin put onto a combination of spiccato and col legno, so you really get the punch of that sound. Then I decided to add a little legato line here to match the piano tune that we had earlier, and that sounds like this. And this is basically the same melody, just across different octaves. So I've got the 60 violins, I've got 20 on the right just to help balance out the cello, and then I've got a couple of viola lines and the 60 cello as well. So that's quite a big sound. And by the end, it kind of grows quite a lot bigger. I added this soft little ostinato underneath just to, again, add to the rhythm. So if we just combine all of these things together, I'll play the piece from the beginning again. Now, just some extra little kind of mixing tips and things like that. As you can see, for the most part, I'm using track stacks, and this is a great way to balance your parts against others. You can see that I have bus processing on most of the buses, and often this will include a little bit of compression just to help contain the level a little bit, but also some EQ as well. Most of the time, we quite often use the Fab Filter range here at Spitfire, and so I often will use the Pro C2 compressor and the Pro Q3 EQ. I tend to use two reverbs, and this is the Cinematic Rooms by Liquid Sonics. I really, really love the sound of this reverb. And then I have a second one, which is the Fab Filter Pro R. Again, similar kind of decay time, but I find that having two reverbs together can just help to make it sound a little bit more realistic. And then these are both being sent, along with some of the other layers as well, to a rear bus, which is basically a mid-side compression that just helps to get a little bit more width. Again, just protects the middle of the stereo image. I think when you're working with sound effects and dialogue, you have to be really careful not to get in the way of that center channel too much. In terms of mastering, you can see here that I've got the Neve 33609 compressor. I tend to compress up to about 2 dB with this, nothing too extreme. I find with plugins, it's good to have lots of plugins doing a small amount rather than just a couple doing loads. You can see I've also got the FabFilter Pro Q3. And again, this is actually something that Jake Jackson set up for me with a bit of side boosting on the low frequencies and the upper frequencies. Finally, I've just got a bit of limiting. I don't tend to limit too much with this. It's mainly just to boost the gain a little bit. So that just about wraps it up for this video. Again, you can download this video for free down below. Just click on the link and share your contributions to this challenge with the hashtag Hans Zimmer Month. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you again very, very soon. Goodbye.